Gone, but not forgotten. Efke KB25. Let's see what it looks like. I wanted to do some more film comparisons to Tri-X like I began earlier in the year. But to keep things consistent, rather than do them every now and then, I went ahead and got 49 different film stocks. Everything I could get in 35mm from B&H and Freestyle. So unless they were out of stock, I got a roll of it. Now, if this part of the video seems familiar, it's because I'm using this portion of the video for all 49 of them rather than record it 49 times. So if you want to skip ahead to the H&D curves or the prints, time codes are right over here. For those of you that haven't seen this part of the video before, here's what I've done. So I wanted to use each film with the exact same shot, which is a headshot of me with a Kodak Gray Card Plus, which happens to have a red, blue, and green patch, a cyan, magenta, yellow patch, and then a dark and a neutral flesh tone. Then, with those shots taken, I bracketed every shot in third of a stop so that we can make sure we have a negative of equal shadow density to the base target film of Tri-X. Now, the reason I use Tri-X is because it's just been around for a long time and it's a very popular film. So it's a good base film to compare everything to. Then, once everything was developed, which was developed in D-76 at stock for the manufacturer's recommended time, I printed everything on Ilford using the exact same aperture, contrast settings, developer, and everything. The only thing I changed was my exposure time, and that was to make sure that I compensated for any base fog variation from one film stock to another. Other than that, everything was left the same so that we can have a comparison of just the qualities of the film. Now, there's going to be some differences in contrast, especially on the high end, and that's because the manufacturers getting their development time may not have used the same target that Kodak used for Tri-X. And that's okay. We're not looking at the overall contrast for everything. What we're really looking at is grain characteristics, tonality, how the film treats the shadows versus the highlights, that sort of thing. And we're looking at spectral sensitivity, thus the Gray Card Plus, rather than just a regular Gray Card. So we're going to go ahead and look at H&D curves, which if you saw one of my earlier videos on sensitometry, I like to use pen and paper and make my graphs. However, my wife was really ready to make sure I was done with this project. So she put everything into a spreadsheet for you all. So even though I don't like them, I want to show them to you thanks to her. Then we're going to go ahead and look at the prints side by side with the same print made from Tri-X. And from there, you can decide if you like the film and if you want to go and use it. So let's go ahead and take a look at the curves and then we'll go to the prints. Our blue line is our Tri-X, the Efke 25 in red. The Efke has actually a fairly good straight line performance. Does shoulder a little bit, not tremendously, but a little bit. The toe is actually fairly steep. That means we should see, hopefully, quite a bit of tonal separation in the low values. We'll see once we look at the prints if that is true. Maybe a little bit less separation in the highlights, but overall, I think on paper, this turned out very well. So let's go ahead and look at those prints and see if the tonal separation is as good as this graph would lead us to believe. Here we have our Efke KB25 and Tri-X 400. Okay, now first question is, why am I doing this comparison with a film that's no longer available? Well, to be honest, there's two reasons. One, I still have some in my freezer. And two, this is still available on the third-party market. eBay. It's available on eBay, and a few other sellers still have some stock laying around, and they're selling it, so you might still be able to pick this up and use it. Okay, so to start with the comparison, this should be a 25 speed. I'm getting it at 16, not 25. Now that could be that's what the film is. It's lost a third of a stop. Or it could be that, well, I guess that would be 2/3 of a stop, 25, 20, and 16. Or it could be that it's just a 16 from the get-go. It's been frozen, so I'm going to say it's probably a 16 speed film. Now, long time ago when I was researching FK in the first place, I saw that this particular film was advertised as a orthopanchromatic, and nobody knew what that meant because that really didn't make much sense. It's either orthochromatic or panchromatic. I think really what they were trying to say is it's slightly less red sensitive. Not a lot red sensitive. It's certainly not blind to red, as we can see here in this patch. It's just not as red sensitive as, say, that. I don't know. This is slightly underdeveloped based on the recommended times from FK, which is still available online for some reason. Now, there's also a rumor, and bear in mind this is just a rumor, and I don't know how old or how reliable this information was, that the people at Adox may have actually wanted to try to revive this and the other speeds available, which I think was a 50 and a 100 speed. I don't have any of the 50, and I couldn't get any of the 50, but I do have the 100 coming up in a separate video. Back to where we were. Slightly less red sensitive, a little underdeveloped. Other than that, it actually turned out a pretty good performance. We can see that it is slightly kludged up in the shadows. It's not separating the blacks or the dark shadow to the mid-tones as well. So it looks like the background's a little bit darker, but that's only slight. Other than that, we actually have pretty good tonality, but let's get in a little bit closer and take a look at the grain and whether or not this was a sharp film. All right, here in the first section of the close-up, we can see the grain and the smooth background, and it is fairly fine. I would say it's pretty comfortable as a 25 or 16 speed film with that grain size. I am picking up the little flyaway hairs pretty well, nice and sharp. So we are getting good sharpness, at least from this point of view. And the detail around my eye looks nice and sharp too. So far, not bad down here in the shadows. Here on the shadow side of my shoulders, we can see we are getting, again, nice evidence of smooth, small grain in the background. We're picking up the little fuzzies on my shoulder as they're silhouetted against the background pretty well. So nothing to complain about here, but nothing like really stand out either. Okay, here we are on the lighted side of my shoulders. The ribbing of the collar is nice and sharp. I'm getting about the same amount of detail as the Tri-X. I am picking up the weave pattern of the smooth fabric a little bit more. We see that in some of the really fine grain films from Rolly, that German one with the R. And the stitching down my shoulders, pretty good. Just a little flat in the contrast from underdevelopment, but otherwise, it's a pretty good performance for a 25 speed film that is, I don't even know how old this is. We'll see, 2021. I would say I probably bought this 15 years ago, and it's been sitting in a freezer since then. I got it, well, no, less than that. I got it when they vanished, and that was probably like 2008 or 9. So 10 or 12 years old. I will say, before I go to the next section, that FK definitely had its loyal fans, and I was one of them with the 100 speed film a long time ago. But they also had their problems. There were issues with like scratched emulsions, huge drips of gelatin that would run down rolls and sheets, dust embedded in the gelatin. It was a rough film, but it was a beautiful film. We'll look at the 100 as well in a separate video, but it definitely earned its place in its fans' hearts. I would say it's a lot like vintage Beetles, which I used to have a 1965 Volkswagen Beetle. That was my first car. It was a hugely problematic car, but I was absolutely in love with that car too. So it was kind of the same thing with this. Absolutely problematic film. Absolutely love them. All right, here we are on the last section. We are getting really good smooth tonality from the midtones to the highlights. We're getting really sharp, nice, crisp detail and everything. This was a great film. It was just a little slow, but it just vanished. Unfortunately, the company couldn't make it, and that's a shame because I feel like as a budget film, it was really one of the more fun and good quality for what you got. So overall, decent performance. Wish it were still around, but alas, like many things photographic, looking at you, Fuji, things get discontinued. All right, that's going to do it for this particular film. Thanks again for watching. If you want to help support this channel, please take a look at my Patreon page or my merchandise page down in the description below. We will see you next time. Thanks again.